I still can't get over this whole thing about we want to do some kind of war. We like, there seems to be like this big push to like, let's do some kind of war. And I keep like coming back to this and like, okay, what's the goal? What precisely, like, how would we know if the war was over, right? Like, so like, oh, all right, let's have this war. How do we know it's over? Like, how is that measured? Because there's a bunch of people that are on the so-called right that are saying, well, we want the end of leftism. Okay, like, how do you measure that then? How exactly is that measured? Well, you know, getting Marxism out of the schools. Okay, that could be just, why don't you just defund the public school system, you know, and the Department of Education? I mean, the Orange Messiah said he was going to do that, and he has yet to do it. So, I mean, you could just go to the Orange Messiah and say, hey, you know, all that crap you said to get elected, we'd like you to maybe do some of that stuff. Now, he's going to say that that's hate speech, apparently, if you actually call him out on that, because, you know, and, you know, I don't know what's wrong with you people anymore. I don't know. Like, you guys will fall for this stuff every time. Anyway, so go to the con man and say, hey, con man, why don't you just actually do some of this stuff, like defund all this? If you really wanted to, like, well, but the colleges are ruining people's minds. Okay, well, then you would just go and say, why don't you just tell the government to stop backing all student loans? Categorically, like, no more backing of any more student loans for any degree, for any university, for any reason. Which that would shut down like 85% of college. In fact, probably more than that. Probably shut down like 90% of all colleges. That would pretty much close them down immediately. Or they'd bring their prices way down. But then that would cut into the Orange Messiah trying to, you know, like, flood the country with a bunch of H-1Bs and cheap labor, because we're trying to replace Americans because Americans are too expensive. So we need to flood the country with a bunch of cheap labor. And that would cut into that, wouldn't it? So you're kind of screwed there, because the Orange Messiah is trying to save the dollar, not the American people. He can give a shit about the American people. I mean, clearly he doesn't. He doesn't care about the American people. He cares about the dollar and making sure that the money keeps going to a little sliver of land that's the piece of the former Ottoman Empire. It seems to me like that seems to be what they care about, not the American people, and certainly not the American working class, you know, the people who have to wake up and go do all the crappy jobs that nobody else wants to do. And even those people are being replaced very quickly. So, because there's no mass deportations, we haven't done that either, even though that was like a main centerpiece, like a focus of it. So I just have to question, you know, are you guys stupid? And like, I'm not trying to be mean when I ask it. I just don't have any other way to ask this, because it just seems like most of the stuff that you guys are upset about on the right, and by the way, don't get me wrong, I actually lean a little bit more right than I do anything else, but it's like all of you that are out there on the insane right, all of this stuff was talked about. And it just seems like you could go back to the Messiah and say, hey, you made all these promises. Why don't you make good on all this stuff? Why don't you get rid of all the H-1Bs? Why don't you stop flooding the country with this? You know, you want to bring in a whole bunch of like imported students to prop up like, those are your own words. You want to prop up the university system because there aren't enough customers, because the ROI isn't there, because you've charged too much money for this fake education, and then kids get out and they can't use their degree for anything. And they come out dumber than when they went in, frankly. So you guys want to have a war? Okay, that's fine. But I mean, like, dude, it sounds to me like you need to figure out who you're at war with. Because if I went to like my commie followers and I asked them, hey, what's your goal? They're going to actually have a closer goal. Like, we want the end of billionaires. Well, okay, that's scientific. That's measurable. You can measure that. Okay. I mean, I'm not making a moral judgment. I'm not even saying I think that they're right. I'm just pointing out, like, that's actually measurable. Like, that's something that's concrete. You know, we want free everything. Well, that's not going to happen. They can try it. I mean, it's not how it works. But like, that is something that, like, that they can answer the question. But a bunch of you guys out there on the so-called political right, you guys sound crazy. You do at this point. You sound like emotional basket cases right now. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just calling it like I see it. That, okay, you want all this stuff. Okay, but then, like, what exactly do you want? Because it needs to be measurable. It needs to be something scientific, something concrete. I don't know, maybe try the end of Federal Reserve. Try that one. Try that one on. Why don't you pump that idea? Because that would pretty much solve all of these problems. You get rid of the Federal Reserve, pretty much solve all of these issues that you guys are complaining about. But then you wouldn't have a printing press to try and, keep all these crazy wars going. You wouldn't have all of this other stuff. You wouldn't be able to bail out any of these companies. Well, we don't want to. Okay, well then that's fine. Then if you don't want to bail out these companies, then this shouldn't be an issue. I don't think that you're trying to. I really don't. For real, I don't think you guys are trying to fight the so-called left or a whole group of crazy whack job furries. I don't think that that's what you're trying to fight. I really think you're fighting for your own soul. Just call it like I see it.